We are grateful. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Ari.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you very much. I am Ari Melber. Welcome to a special edition of The Beat, featuring tonight an extended interview with Dr. Anthony Fauci, the renowned director of the federal government's Institute of Infectious Diseases since 1984. He's speaking out tonight, the very night that the federal government is on track to approve America's first COVID vaccine, sending out trucks loaded with the shots to hospitals across the nation. This is big news, of course, for how this pandemic ends, while also stoking life and death policy questions like who goes first, who makes these tough calls, and when can you get your vaccine dosage? Dr. Fauci will tackle these important questions tonight and speak on the challenges as COVID, of course, is surging to these record-breaking numbers we've been tracking this very week, as well as lessons learned from his work with presidents across party lines, including, of course, the outgoing Trump administration. So that interview, I want you to know, is coming up live tonight on The Beat. I urge you to stick with us for the hour because I am very interested to hear what Dr. Fauci has to say. Now, we begin right now with our top story, the legal and political squabbling over that very same reference I just made to the outgoing Trump administration. The work week winding down in Washington right now tonight. The Supreme Court, though, set to respond to this frivolous Republican suit that asked the court to do what it's never done: cancel the certified results of a federal election. Now, legal experts have already widely explained this isn't the kind of case the Supreme Court will bother to hear because it's frivolous, let alone the kind of case that the Supreme Court has ever used, I mean ever, under any circumstance to overturn an election. So that is the legal brick wall. There's also new reporting, though, on why Donald Trump may be so focused on rallying his base as a potential insurance policy to discourage what's going on in New York, specifically the top prosecutor there accelerating the inquiry into Donald Trump's finances. The New York Times reporting new subpoenas, the DA questioning witnesses, which shows they are significantly escalating an investigation into the president that he is, quote, powerless to stop. Now, that's a big statement in the paper of record. It's an objective statement about how this works. That the president, while powerful, is, quote, powerless even amidst flexing his pardons because they're only for federal crimes. This is a local case. It's already using powerful local authority to compel cooperation, like threatening jail time for anyone who might defy those subpoenas for Trump org materials, plus the broader context you see here of inquiries hitting Donald Trump's accountant, plus requests there for more information from Trump's bank, to scrutinizing potential false statements or lies that were made to Donald Trump's insurance company. You take it all together, and it looks like the very deep dive that Donald Trump famously worried Bob Mueller would do. Now, only Donald Trump knows why he finds a probe of his business finances so concerning. Let's get right to our experts tonight. Jason Johnson, a professor at Morgan State University, and Daniel Alonzo. He was chief assistant district attorney in Manhattan under Cy Vance, the DA leading this very probe. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ari.
Daniel, you are one of the most sought-after experts in the country for exactly the question tonight. How does this kind of investigation work under DA Vance? You are one of the closest people to him. Your answer.
Well, I know how many people out there are waiting for this investigation to come to a conclusion and are, hoping that there will be charges against Trump. I would say that the best I could tell you is that is certainly very possible. He certainly can't pardon himself for that, even if he could pardon himself for federal crimes. But I think we're still a pretty long way from some charge against Trump. This is an enormously complicated investigation based on what we've been reading in the papers. Trump Organization itself is a complicated organization. The real estate industry is very complicated. These applications for loans or insurance were no doubt full of lawyers and accountants advising the organization and Trump himself on this stuff. So it's going to be, it sounds like they have something pretty good, which is that the value of the assets that they presented to Deutsche Bank was overstated. So it sounds like the DA can prove that the assets were overstated, but to prove a criminal fraud case or a criminal case of falsifying bank records, you have to prove criminal intent, you have to prove knowledge, you have to prove that they were intending to actually get something they weren't entitled to. So it's a complicated thing. add on top of that.
Let's break it down a little bit. You're saying, number one, there's evidence they lied. Number two, the evidence of those lies could constitute a crime if it was to the government and knowing. And number three, that it's going to take DA Vance some time to go through all of this and then figure out where they land.
From the reporting that we've seen in public, sure, that's what it sounds like. But it's very, very complicated. And New York law, I was going to say, adds on top of it an extra layer, which is that it's much more complicated to bring an indictment in state court in New York than it is in federal court, for example. So it takes a long time. Although I did read today that there is apparently a grand jury that's been taking testimony. Right now, they're on pause in New York, but I gather that means they have a long-term grand jury impaneled, which is a sign.
And just briefly on that, before I bring in Jason, the point there being, while it's a long ways, as you say, from any potential charges, and we cover that process fairly, at this juncture, they have more than nothing. Because you don't just have a grand jury impaneled like this after all of this other evidence. If they found, for example, we double-checked and we looked at the insurance and the bank info and it was a harmless error, well, then if you're fair, you back down. You don't just keep the grand jury going, right?
Oh, they clearly have more than nothing. I mean, to start with, Michael Cohen's testimony by itself provides what we call predication to have an investigation. There's a lot of stuff in there that does suggest that crimes were committed. Now, obviously, he has credibility problems, so you have to track it all down. But they've been up and down to the Supreme Court 1.5 times now. 5 courts have ruled in favor of DA Vance. So, no, they've got more than nothing.
Yeah. Well, let me bring in Jason. Let me bring in Jason, who's been patiently with us. Now, Jason, across America, 6 p.m. hour on the East Coast, people may be having their first glass of wine, having a little bit of dinner, and they may be thinking, 6 minutes of Ari and Daniel being lawyers is just about enough. And we want to know, beyond the lawyer
6 minutes,
legalese,
Jason Johnson, you're on. I get it. I'm ready.
Jason, what does it mean that Donald Trump is running around filing these frivolous lawsuits with help from Republicans at the Supreme Court, trying to rally the base, lying to people against the backdrop of what Daniel just very carefully, thankfully, carefully outlined, sounds like real legal heat?
Ari, it's really basic. What you have, the moment that they start putting the grand juries together in New York, that was shots fired, right? Like, Trump knows he is in trouble. Trump knows that there's no amount of pressure that Rudy Giuliani or any of his cronies can bring to the table. He knows he's got Cohen out there who's going to give evidence against him. So what he wants to do is create enough of a feverish movement amongst his supporters that are still existing in the country to make it difficult politically. I don't know if that's going to be effective, not just because these frivolous court cases haven't really gone anywhere, but because, what was it, the recent filing, they're talking about brand new states, new Nevada and new California. I mean, the lawsuits are ridiculous. But Donald Trump's whole strategy throughout his entire political career has been, if I keep distracting people with this thing over here, maybe they won't be as dedicated to that thing over there. And I've said, Ari, all along, that from a political standpoint, the thing that Donald Trump has to worry about, it's not just he's legally exposed in New York, but that every single state attorney, district attorney, AG across the United States who thinks they can make a political career off taking a pot shot on Donald Trump is watching this case, because you're going to see other Democrats attempt to do this as he leaves office as a way to promote their own political future. So, Trump can do all the crazy lawsuits he wants. It's not going to change the fact that he is a wonderful punching bag for any Democrats moving forward.
Yeah, and Jason, speak about the political environment for that, because we've covered the precedent of the controversial pardon of Nixon by his successor in cases that were wholly federal. Watergate, federal obstruction, dealings with Congress. It was federal in nature. Nixon didn't run some side business that had state law exposure. And so the politics of the Republican Party clearly took a hit with frustration over what was viewed as that criminal lawlessness. Do you see a situation here where, because Trump is saddled in things that are ongoing in other states, that don't have that same clean federal line, do you see a world where enough Republicans actually think, well, fine, do what you got to do in New York. We don't want to keep defending this.
Eventually some will, Ari, but you got to remember, at this point, a lot of Republicans, this is operating like a cult, right? Like, you have Republicans in Utah who are like, we're not getting involved in this case. It doesn't make any sense. You have Republican senators, one Republican senator in Texas who's like, this is insane. And Ted Cruz has decided that he wants to bend the knee to Donald Trump again. I don't think there are enough Republicans who are going to stand up and say, this is ridiculous, I'm out, deuces. But what you are going to see is Republicans at a state level face increasing pressure in case there are crimes. Here's the thing, Ari, it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about things that other members of his administration might have done that have been exposed during the course of this administration. We don't know about Ivanka. We don't know what kind of trade issues she may have been involved with. We don't know how her and Jared Kushner made $80 million while they were still in the White House. There are so many different instances where they are legally exposed at the state level. I think you're going to have some Republicans who will continue to defend it with crazy, distracting lawsuits, but you're going to have a lot of Democrats at the state level. And hey, maybe even an anti-Trump Republican in one of these states, maybe in Virginia, maybe in Maryland, maybe these other places, like, you know what? I'll take a pot shot at Trump too, because I want to establish that I'm a new kind of Republican going forward.
Jason stays with me, Dan. I've just about 30 seconds left because I got to save time for Dr. Fauci. On the flip side, what do you say to critics out across the country, MAGA supporters who say, oh, Cy Vance, who you worked with, New York Democrat type, just wants to torture Donald Trump. That's all this is about. What do you say to them?
Well, first of all, that's not how he works. But I will say that the notion that only Democrats across the country are going to be gunning for him, I mean, that's hopefully not how prosecutors are supposed to work. You know, nobody should be gunning for any defendant, let alone the president, just because they want to make a political name for themselves. Cy Vance is unlikely to run for re-election. That's what's sort of out there right now. So this is not a political thing. This is something which he evidently believes in, at least to investigate. We'll see what he does in terms of filing charges or not.
Understood. Someone with unique insights into this and a careful legal mind. Dan, thank you very much. Jason stays.